Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Forrester, and welcome to a webinar on the 8 steps to ultimate AWS certification. We'll note that this webinar will cover steps to certification, but can be used as a guide to plan your journey towards any kind of level and expertise in AWS. So let's get started. The idea here is to basically give you a step-by-step guide that you can use to obtain whatever level of expertise you're looking for with AWS. So whether you're a beginner or you're at the professional level and you've been working with AWS for a number of years, the goal here is to give you a guide by which you can actually achieve the level of expertise you're looking for, how to get hands-on experience, and ultimately, if you're interested, how to pass the certification. But the main goal is to reinforce experience and expertise in AWS, again, whether you're a beginner or an expert. I will be watching for questions, both in the questions area and in chat, and I will stop what I'm doing if the question is particularly is relevant for what I'm talking about, but I will actually stop and answer questions as they come in. So feel free to drop them in at any point in time. Okay. With that being said, we will go forward from here. All right, so our objective is to get you some clear steps for experience and expertise inside of AWS, and that's the primary goal. We want to give you a step-by-step guide if you can, and there's actually some 8 steps here that we're going to follow, including prerequisite skills, learning in the context of certification, getting some hands-on resources, reinforcing you with some practice exams and legitimate practice exams, not some kind of weird test copy like Test King or something like that. And then optionally scheduling your exam, and then how to set up continual mastery. So what we're not doing is we're not necessarily chasing hype cycles. To mention this, AWS is now 15 years old. So in 2021, AWS alone, not even including the other cloud providers, is north of a $50 billion a year business annually in terms of revenue. So, S3 and SQS were released first in 2006. And since that time, AWS's list of services has grown tremendously. But this is not cutting edge discussion here. We are talking about a mainstay and in some cases an afterthought, because every startup I'm dealing with nowadays is on cloud. They're not starting actually with hardware. So this is now the default and de facto way in which new companies in particular are expected to deploy. And almost every company, I don't know that I've actually talked to one in the last 5 years, has a hybrid footprint where they're either moving to cloud or they're looking to leverage cloud in addition to their on-premise data center. So we're not chasing hype here. This is a rock solid core technology that's expected to be mainstay for almost every deployment that we're looking at now. Now, I will forewarn you, particularly if you are new to this space and perhaps you've been in IT for a while and haven't yet gotten into cloud in some form or fashion, just know that if you go and look at the sheer amount of information on AWS's services, you will be overwhelmed. It is overpowering. And because the sheer breadth of services, they have quantum computing, they have robotics, they have all kinds of services. We don't need all those services, but there's a tremendous number of them. And if you look at the console, you might think to yourself, whew, man, how am I going to keep up with this immense ecosystem? And here's the pro tip. It is overwhelming. It is a lot. But we don't want to focus on the whole pie, if you will. We want to focus on the pieces of the pie that are relevant for the project and relevant for our roles and our careers. So don't let the console overwhelm you. You do not need to know every service in AWS. You just need to know the 10, maybe 15 services that are super relevant for your role. So let's talk about some prerequisites. So one, you do have to have a compelling reason to go towards AWS. And I will just say that, my boss said I have to is really not a great reason, because that's not inspiring. Now, if the whole company is moving towards cloud, that could be inspiring, right? Or if you realize that, this is now a mainstay. So if I want to stay relevant for my career for the next 5, 10 years, then I probably want to go ahead and get some mastery around cloud. That's a great reason. Maybe you want more money. Maybe you want to work on different projects. Maybe you want a different job. Whatever your reasoning, have a compelling why as to why you're chasing this, right? And make sure it's something that's really meaningful and relevant to you. Number two, if you decide to go past the initial levels, make sure that when we're talking about prerequisites that you consider yourself technical. If you're just going to go after a cloud practitioner or some kind of business validation for cloud, you don't need to be technical. But if you're going to go anything past the initial level, past the foundational level, you must consider yourself technical, and you must have a fundamental knowledge of the tech industry. That means a little bit of knowledge around networking, a little bit of knowledge around storage, if you're chasing those services. If you're a machine learning specialist, you just need to know about machine learning, right? If you're a data analytics specialist, then you just need to know about data analytics. But if you're doing kind of a more operational, I would say even a developer role, or an architect role, then you're going to want to have some general fundamental background. But if you're a specialist, you can actually stick with your specialization. Prerequisite number three, you have to know either a command line PowerShell like Bash, for example, or a programming language, preferably a bit of both, actually. So I don't need you to be a feature programmer. I don't need you to have the ability to code a web app from the ground up, but you need to know what variables are, what conditions are, how to interface with an API. And to be frank, if you've never done any of those things, it's actually really easy to learn. But that's going to help you greatly, because just to say this, everything in AWS is software-defined infrastructure. It's API-defined infrastructure. So while you can use the console to validate and verify, the console being the web app, right? You have to use the command line and or programmatic tools in order to be able to really scale with AWS. If you want to be good at AWS, you must be able to interact with it programmatically. So particularly past the first level, you've got to have a little bit of knowledge around command line and maybe a little bit of hackability skills around a programming language. And number four kind of relates to number one, focus in on some services. So, if you look at the whole pie of what's available inside of AWS, it's very intimidating. And so let's not do that, right? Let's focus on, for example, virtual machines, or networking, or security, or databases, or machine learning model training, right? Like, I would focus on that instead of trying to eat the entirety of AWS. So that's our first step, is those four prerequisites. So let's talk about step two, other than my gratuitous Mandalorian pictures that I throw in there. Step two is, if you are looking to achieve either a certification or just some level of experience and expertise, what's your target? Where are you going next? You might know where you're at, but you want to know where you're going, right? And in order to do that, you want to choose an exam, ideally, right? And the great thing about choosing an exam, even if you're not going for a certification, is that it's going to give you resources to achieve the desired level of expertise and experience with AWS. So you'll notice here, and this is right off of AWS certification page, is that there's actually a cloud practitioner certification. You'll see that at the very, very bottom. And then above that, you'll see in the blue hexagons, those are the associates levels. So you'll see actually right here, right? And here, you'll see where the architect, the operations, and developer certifications are. And then up here, you'll see the professional certifications. And over in purple, you can actually see the specialty certifications. Now, if you're a beginner to AWS, you're just getting started, pretty much everybody starts with Cloud Practitioner. If you have some level of experience and exposure to running production workloads in AWS, then you want to look at the blue level of expertise first. And if you've been running for multiple years inside of AWS, then you definitely want to do either the solutions architect or the DevOps engineer first. Sorry, you want to go for those first, right? Recommendation is that if you're a specialist and you have little to no experience and you want to go straight for your specialty, go for solutions architect first, because that will give you a broad design and capability view of what's going on with AWS, and then jump over to your specialty, because it'll allow you to deep dive into that specialty better and have better context about how other services relate to your service. One of the great things about AWS is its integrations with all of the services, like how you can get, for example, the simple storage service to talk directly to Redshift, which is the data warehousing service, right? Or how you can use Athena, which is an SQL reader for structured file formats, how you can use Athena to talk to S3. If you don't know what S3 is, then you won't know what those integrations are. So if you're deciding to go for one of the specialty exams over here, just note that it's recommended that you actually maybe come over in this direction and do solutions architect first. But again, if you're brand new and don't know where to start, or maybe you're just not feeling confident with the experience that you do have, start with Cloud Practitioner. So that would be, first, choose your targeted level of expertise and experience. And so Cloud Practitioner would be the place to start. All right, just checking for questions. Okay. Now, once you've chosen your exam, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that all of these exams have classes associated with them, but do know that there are tons of other AWS classes that are not associated with certifications. For example, there's Security Essentials for those who might want to take security first, right? There's Business Essentials for those who want like a deeper dive into the business aspects of AWS before you get to Cloud Practitioner. And then there's Technical Essentials, which again is probably for people who have prior experience but just want a refresher of the basics. Generally Cloud Practitioner has been considered now the entry point since it's been brought on board for AWS. But just know that you can skip Cloud Practitioner if you're not looking for that certification. Either go to Technical Essentials or Security Essentials to go directly to your next level of certification. So for example, if you're a security specialist, you might go to Security Essentials first and then go to the 3-day security specialty class. I think it's Security Engineering on AWS is the name of the actual class. If you already have 6 months experience, but you're very technical in your role, you might not choose to do Cloud Practitioner. Instead, you might do Technical Essentials, which is a class on the side. But to be clear, the hexagons in red on the right do not have a certification associated with them. But again, if that's not what you're shooting for at that level, it may not be that important, actually. Okay. So once you've got your target, what do you do next? Oh, it is worth mentioning, by the way, that the exams are constantly evolving. So for example, in March earlier this year, just a month or two ago, AWS actually ran a hands-on version of their SysOps administration class. Right now, the exams are typically, for lack of a better word, they're a trivia test. There's a single right answer or multiple right answers, and there's a variety of scenarios that you can challenge yourself with inside the AWS exams. But just know that the exams are switching to a combination of trivia plus hands-on, where either through the console or the command line, you have to achieve certain objectives inside of your mock lab, if you will. So just know there's multiple choice, multiple response, and an exam lab items inside of these new exams that are coming out from AWS. Good. Okay, so step one, you've got your prerequisites, right? You figured out your compelling why, you've made sure you've got the proper technical skills, you know what services you're running after. Step two, you have picked the certification that reflects what you're looking for in terms of expertise and experience, right? And if you're just beginning, again, as Cloud Practitioner. Step three is that, well, let's get a map. So you know where you're at. You know now what your target is because you've chosen a target. How do you get from where you're at to where the target is? Well, you've got to get a guide. So Amazon, in conjunction with partners, has published these awesome ramp-up guides. And these ramp-up guides, by the way, are by role or by technology. Let me blow that up so it's a little bit more readable. So you can actually, if you're an architect, You can actually download a guide, business persons, operations, developer, cloud. What if you're in machine learning? Well, guess what? They've got a machine learning guide down here. What if you're in security? It's right here. What if you're in storage? That's down here. The only one that seems to be kind of missing that I'm kind of curious about what's happening with AWS is that the networking certification doesn't seem to have a clear guide, but maybe it's somewhere else, like maybe under, for example, operations. So I have looked, by the way. There doesn't seem to be a networking specific guide, but that's the only gap. Every other certification seems to have some kind of what they call ramp up guide that supports the level of expertise or your role or your technology. Now, that being said, let's say that you want to be the best cloud architect that's ever existed, which is, I think, a noble goal, actually. And so you want to have a step-by-step certification because you want to, basically go from where you're at to being, good, decent, skilled, competent at designing in AWS. Well, these step-by-step guides will give you free listings of resources that you can do inside of AWS. The only thing that's not available to you for free typically is these classroom training rubrics, right? So for example, you can actually take Cloud Practitioner Essentials on the web, and that's the way it was for years, but then people were clamoring for an instructor-led or virtual-led version of Cloud Practitioner, and so they added in some classroom training for those who want to interact with an instructor and have them, divest experience and mold the class to your needs. Note here that there's things like white papers, there's web pages, there's free digital training that you can get actually on AWS, including things like the shared responsibility model, best practices, blog posts, etc. Note that the architecture guide will take you all the way from the associate's certification, right? So notice this is the associate certification. So notice it took you from Cloud Practitioner, which is up here. Oops, sorry. Notice it took you from Cloud Practitioner, right? Here is the class, Cloud Practitioner Essentials. So you could actually at this point take the certification if you wanted to, after doing that work, all the way up to the associate's level certification, which is right here. And then it continues on. This ramp up guide alone continues on, taking you into advanced architecting, and then it actually takes you all the way to the professional exam for solutions architecture. So note that if you get an operations exam, it goes from Cloud Practitioner all the way up to associates, all the way to professional. So if we go back and look at our map from before, it actually, the guides will take you from this foundational black hexagon down here for Cloud Practitioner up through the blue and then all the way up to solutions architecture. So these guides are fairly comprehensive in that they will easily allow you to step-by-step go from the first level to say the second level to the third level, and they'll give you a step-by-step kind of study guide for how to get there, right? So the paths will always start foundational all the way up. Now, to answer a question, you do not have to take the foundational exams in order to take the higher level exams. So if you want to leap straight to a DevOps engineer, you can do that. And by the way, when you do that certification, let's say you get DevOps engineer professional, you automatically inherit the certifications beneath it. So they automatically renew for you, right? So if you take solutions architect, then you automatically get a professional, then you automatically get solutions architect associate. So these link together. All right, looking for questions. All right, looks clear this far. All right, so step one, get your prerequisites down. Steps two, get a map that will allow you to choose the level or target, if you will. Sorry, choose the target that you're looking for experience and expertise. Step three, get a map that actually will allow you to go from that level that you're at to the level that you're looking for and targeting for certification. And again, just a reminder, in that webpage that's in the link, right, there are tons of guides for almost every role and every piece of technology that you're looking for. The only one that seems to be missing right now is networking. So it's not just quite there yet. All right. By the way, these links are available on our website, which I will actually be sharing the link for the full kind of article, if you will, that lists all these steps. But just in case you don't have it, and you want to look at the ramp-up guides right away, here's a direct link to the ramp-up guide straight out to the audience. Okay. All right. Now, I know this is interesting, right? Because it's like, why does it say do what the exam guide says? Well, because you've got your target, you figured out your compelling why, you've got a map, do what the exam guide or the ramp-up guide says. Do what the map says. If the map says read the white papers, read them. At least skim the content. You don't have to memorize it. The glossary, you can skip that, right? If it says take an instructor-led class or take a digital training, take it, right? If there's vocabulary that you don't know, find out where it's at. The only thing that I recommend is that don't take the AWS practice exams. The AWS practice exams are horrible, frankly. They're not the best. I have better practice exams that you can take. You'll spend $10, maybe $15 on a bad sale day to get them. And they, thus far, every person who has taken those practice exams in conjunction with doing the training, every person that's worked with me on certification has passed the certification on first try. And that includes, I train people directly from Amazon and from other companies, and these practice exams are spectacular, right? And then, of course, the last piece is make sure you practice a little. It would be better for you to spend 15 minutes every day actually just engaging a little bit with reading and the white papers and the training than a massive like 4-hour investment on a Saturday. Of course, you know your life better than I do, so don't let me try and wrangle your schedule. But a little bit of practice every single day is typically going to reap more rewards than a huge investment over a single like once a week kind of period. So step 1, get your prerequisites. Step 2, figure out what your target is for certification. Step 3, get a map to get to your target. Step 4, follow the map. Do what the map says, except for the practice exams. And then let's talk about step 5, except for S3 outages. Let's talk about step 5. Why don't we get some hands-on experience almost for free? Almost for free. So some of this is free. Some of this is gonna, you might, if you're sloppy, you might spend a little bit less than $10, but it's some of the best experience that you're gonna get around AWS, quite frankly, because they're published by AWS. So let's start with the first one. So this is Quick Labs. And if you're not familiar with Quick Labs is actually the official lab provider of AWS. So when you actually take an official class with AWS as of today, Quick Labs is actually providing access to the official AWS accounts that back those labs. And so you actually log in to a partner link that's quicklabs.com basically. Now that was the unformatted link, but here's the cool thing. Is if we go back to the pre-formatted link, not just the generic link, and we open that up, what's interesting is that there's actually a dedicated section just for AWS. And if we click hands-on labs to kind of like refresh our environment, what will happen is if you actually scroll through, you will find free labs that you can take inside of AWS. Now first, let me scroll that out to 50. And let me just make sure I'm logged in because I'm probably not actually logged in. Bear with me just one second. You have to be logged in actually to see the full set of labs listed. So if you scroll down, right, you see like my credit, by the way, is $1. And as you scroll down into these spaces, typically there are free labs. There's actually 14 at my last count. There's free labs. So this is identity and access management. This is DynamoDB, which is a NoSQL database service. By the way, if you want to spend $1 and do some of these amazing labs, like the EC2 lab, you can actually spend $1 and do that. You can just buy credits a la carte. But as you scroll down, there's more free labs. Like there's S3 with a free lab. And so as you scroll through this list, there's Amazon API Gateway. You'll find free labs. Device Farm, by the way, is so you can do QA against mobile devices. Most people, unless you're in QA, won't be interested in that. But there's these free labs that allow you to get actual logged in hands-on experience for free with AWS. And who knows, you might actually like Quick Labs enough, and I have no affiliation with them other than being an AWS partner. You might actually spend the $55 a month to get unlimited access to their labs for a period of time. So this is a great way to get free hands-on experience. So if you want to grab the 13, 14 labs, most of them are about 45 minutes to an hour. You can actually dive into a variety of different technologies that might be relevant for your skill set. If nothing else, doing these labs will get you familiar with the console, in some cases familiar with the actual like command line tools, and familiar with the specific services. So it's a great way to get access. So that's Quick Labs. Someone asked me, by the way, is that will the slides be available after the presentation? I actually will give you a direct link to the entire article that has all of these pieces available to you. So you'll actually have access to the article that this was derived from. The other links that might be relevant here are Ec2 Spot Workshops, which is actually a free AWS website. It will require you to create a free AWS account. But let me just say this, don't be afraid. Be discerning, be cautious, but don't be afraid. Go out there with your personal email address, create an account. It will require a phone number and a credit card, and you will get charged nothing, by the way, nothing for having this account. Not only that, but AWS has what's called a free tier. And so in this free tier, what will happen is that you can actually get a bunch of free services that you can use to practice with AWS. So for example, there's a couple of services that are always free and a couple that are just free the first 12 months, but you can run a small EC2 virtual machine for a month, no issue. You could run 2 for 2 weeks and not get charged anything. You could run 4 for 1 week and get charged nothing. You can host up to 5 gigabytes of S3, 750 hours, which by the way is a full month of an RDS database. Now it's going to be tiny, but guess what? If you're just messing around, do you need to spend on $2 an hour on a machine? No. Same with DynamoDB, SageMaker, Lambda, all of these services, by the way, and there's like pages and pages of them. Most of them are free for your first year. And if you just look at the ones that are always free, there's a couple here, like the highly managed services, that are always free for your use. So just know that as I share these labs with you, like the Ec2 Spot Workshop or the EKS Workshop, which is about Kubernetes, or the CDK Workshop, which is about doing infrastructure as code, all of these links will require a free account, except for the first one. But when you create a free account, just know that you will get discounts, and in most cases, free services that you can use to practice with AWS. So there's, by the way, tons more unlisted workshops that are available out there. Many times, if, for example, let's go like to the EKS workshop, which is about Kubernetes. And by the way, if you're not learning Kubernetes, I could not emphasize enough that you need to, right? But usually, by the way, at the bottom of the left-hand side, you'll see that there'll be links to other resources. For example, partner workshops. Here, there's other workshops on DevOps, security, infrastructure as code. If you want more workshops on serverless, you can do that. If you want workshops on testing, like how to create testing frameworks or a modern GitLab architecture, these are all free training links that will require you to have an account, but they'll cost you, if not pennies, they'll cost you a couple of dollars to run. But the experience that you get from running these labs hands-on is invaluable. And so combined with you studying step by step what's in the ramp-up guide that we were looking at earlier, this guide, plus the hands-on experience that you can get from free labs and quick labs, plus doing any of these links inside of the free unlisted labs that you can do, combined, that will give you the experience and the expertise to be excellent at AWS. Now, of course, I would be completely remiss is that if you take classes with WebAge in particular, because we're one, I believe, of 5 partners in the United States that can teach AWS classes, we do add a bunch of labs and add-ons for you that will allow you to train even further Some of them are very similar to the resources that you're seeing here. And of course, let me be clear, since this is about you and it's not about me, right? Any platform that provides labs with the courses is going to be ideal, right? But I just want to say this, for most of us, if you're not taking a course that has labs attached to it, you're probably not going to retain the material as deeply. I say probably because, you know, we're all different, right? But like, I love Udemy, for example. Udemy is one of my favorite websites to pick up trainings and to study and whatnot. But often Udemy courses don't come with labs. But like, if I go to A Cloud Guru, and also formerly Linux Academy, which is now included in A Cloud Guru, if I go to Linux Academy / A Cloud Guru, they have a cloud environment that you can go practice in. Absolutely fabulous, right? So any platform that provides labs is going to be absolutely spectacular. Of course, I would recommend that you come study with us, because we'll not only give you add-ons for the official AWS courses, but we will also give you a more personalized experience depending on your environment. All right, so let's just do a quick review. Step 1, get a compelling why. Step 2, get a map for what you're targeting for your certification. Step 1 is actually to pick a targeted certification. Your next step is then to get a map. So you've got your compelling why, you've got your targeted certification. Now you're going to get a map for that targeted certification. Step 4 is that you are going to get some hands-on experience almost for free. Oh, and by the way, don't forget, you're actually going to do what the exam guide says. Then you're going to get some hands-on experience. And then after you get your hands-on experience, so you've got your compelling why, you've got your targeted certification, you've got your path to get to the targeted certification, you're following the path, you've got some good hands-on experience. Why don't you challenge yourself and take some good practice exams? Good practice exams, right, especially if they're like supported by the vendor, which the ones we're going to recommend it are excellent, because many times they will give you near relevancy for the questions you're going to see on the exam. And so my recommendation is that use the practice exams last to basically confirm and reinforce what you know and what you don't know. Now, you may remember when I said, hey, we're going to look at the ramp-up guide and you're going to do what the ramp-up guide says. I said, don't do the practice exams. Don't do the AWS practice exams. They're not awesome yet, right? But what we're going to do is that I want you to get practice exams, and I want you to see if you can pass them at 95%, learn the whys of the answers, why this answer is right and why the others are wrong, and not just the memorization of it. And you only want to use practice exams that give you an explanation of why the answers are right and why the answers are wrong. So for example, we have recommendations that are here. And so for example, this is the, oh, hi, welcome back. Let's sign back in. This is the Developer's Associate practice exams. And here, by the way, ideally, by the way, you want a 95%. Obviously, I've been messing around, so I'm not always passing, right? Although, you know, sometimes I take these exams and I'm like, oh my God, I need to go back and study myself, right? Like, you know, that one, obviously, I was failing intentionally. But what's interesting about this, pardon me just one second, is that this is by a gentleman named John Bonso, whose exams I recommend highly. And if you come in here and actually review the questions that he has set up, what you'll see is that he'll not only tell you like if an answer is correct or incorrect, but he'll tell you why. He will go into a deep explanation, and he'll tell you exactly his sources for why this answer is the right answer. So he'll go through and tell you, he'll say, look, here, the correct answers are this, but here are the answers here, and these are wrong. Like, these aren't going to work, actually. And he'll tell you why they're wrong. And that's what you want when you take exam questions, is you want them to tell you why the other answers are wrong, why these answers are right, because that will round out your knowledge about the services in question. Not only that, John is exceptionally known for his little cheat sheets. And so this is one for Lambda. So let's say you've been fumbling around a lot of Lambda questions. This will give you a really easy, now you want to obviously engage as much as you want to, but this will give you an easy, comprehensive list of things to study about the service in question. Now, it looks like a lot, but one read through of this will probably reveal a lot about the service to you. So make sure you take the time, if you keep running into the same questions, to answer and study the cheat sheet in question, right, if you need to. Now, most of these exam guides are by John. I think maybe this one is by Stephen Merrick, if I remember correctly. Hold on. Or sorry, Stefan, not Stephen. Bear with me one second. Let's go back here and see. Yeah. So this is by Stefan. So Stefan Merrick, and he's got people who hang out with him, like Mr. Singh here, like Abhishek. Mr. Abhishek Singh will also hang out, but Mr. Merrick will partner with other people. But like, this is a great DevOps engineer professional exam. I believe John Bonso now has a DevOps engineering professional exam, but just know that Stefan Merrick is another great gentleman, and whoever he partners with is always high quality as well. Like Mr. Singh here is actually 9 times certified in AWS, which means that obviously he's really good at any practice exams and probably running AWS as a result, right? Because you don't get through 9 detailed exams without really knowing your stuff around AWS. All right. So there's a link to our favorite practice exams. Note that I don't have specialty exams yet listed here, but I will soon, because both Stefan and John have started to list basically on their website exams. So John Bonso in particular at Tutorials Dojo is starting to have specialty exams show up. So you'll see those here listed soon. Okay. So you found your compelling why. You've prepared yourself. You've got your prerequisites done. You figured out what certification you're going to go for. You get a map for that certification. You're following the map. You've gotten your hands-on expertise, and you've done your practice exams, and you've passed 3 of the practice exams consistently at 95%. You've now got the experience and expertise. You're ready. You've done everything. So then you schedule your exam. Now, if you want to be bold, by the way, some people schedule their exam first. Like, you know what? We're actually going to lead with this as our kind of first lead off, right? We're gonna start here. And some people will say, yeah, that's exactly where I want to be, right? I want to start. I want to lead by signing up with the exam, and I'm going to use that pressure to fuel my ability to study, my next steps, everything. So whether that's your first or your 7th step, you're going to schedule your exam, and that's going to be the next thing that you're going to do. And by the way, just to mention this, is that scheduling an exam is pretty straightforward, right? If you go to AWS Certification, if you go straight to the website, and you say, look, I want to get some skills. What will happen is that if you go to the certification website, not only will you see that picture that I showed earlier, showing the specialty certifications and everything else, not only will you get the latest updates, right, if you're looking for it, but as of last year, they started to allow online proctoring of exams. So you can now take the exam from the comfort of your home, which of course makes sense in a pandemic. But if you schedule the exam, just know that when you come here first, they're going to ask you to sign in. Now, if you've already created an AWS account, and particularly if it's associated with your personal email address or your work email address, be mindful, by the way, you probably want to associate it with your personal email address just so that it sticks with you and not necessarily associated with your work email address. But when you click sign in, by the way, because you're not going to choose Partner Central, you're going to click sign in all regions. And then notice that I actually have an Amazon account, and then I also have my kind of like work personal account, right? And so I'm going to sign in here using my official AWS associated account. And then what will happen is that this will actually take you to your certification account. Now, the certification account is actually hosted by a company called CertMetrics. It's a company that Amazon uses in this upper corner here. And with this certification account, what will happen is that when you want to schedule a new exam, you just schedule a new exam button. It's going to ask you what kind of exam that you want to do, and it will actually show you the exams that you could take, right? And so wow, the last time I was here. Anyway, so usually a schedule with Pearson VUE is the ones that do the online certification. So like, for example, I have to retake the DevOps engineering certification soon. So if I click on schedule with Pearson VUE, what will happen? It will actually log me into the Pearson VUE, and it'll say, look, I want to take it, online from my home. One thing to be aware of is that there are minimum requirements to actually taking the exam at home, including making sure that your desk space is completely clear. You cannot have two monitors. And if someone walks in while you're taking the test, depending on the nature of the intrusion, you automatically fail. So make sure that you are in an isolated environment. The kids and the dogs are like completely like not going to come in, because these exams can last for an hour and a half to 3 hours, depending on which exam you're taking. So just be mindful that you really want to like have an isolated environment to do to take with. And please don't use your work computer, and please make sure that you have a solid internet connection if possible. I've even gone to like a dedicated office for a day in order to take the exams when I've had a lot going on in my home, where I can't guarantee actually that I can have that consistency. All right. And so, by the way, once you get here and you process, they'll ask you a bunch of agreements and whatnot. Now, one thing to note is that prices for the exams also vary as well. So, for example, if you come in and click on Cloud Practitioner, you'll note that it's going to cost you $100, and it's a 65-question multiple choice exam. The associate's degrees, if you decide to schedule your exam, these are also going to be 65-question multiple response, but notice they're going to be $150 USD. Now, I will mention this. Once you pass your first exam, Amazon will typically give you a 50% discount voucher, multiple of them actually, for your next exam. So if you take Cloud Practitioner at $100, you're typically only going to have to take your next exam at associate's level at $75, because you're going to get a 50% discount. So for example, in my particular certification, if you look under the benefits, you can see that one of the benefits of certification, and by the way, these are all claimed, so hopefully, right, is that you get 50% off your next exam. So you'll notice that, right, there's a bunch of 50% discounts on the exam itself. So note that when you take your exam, you will get benefits. So the associates are 150. If you decide to go after one of the professional level exams, those are going to be 300. Again, you get a 50% discount, so 150. And the specialty exams, if you look at those are going to be the same 65-question format, and these will also cost you $300, right? So to date, there are no exams that have hands-on experience except for the emerging SysOps exam, so System Operations Associates, but that hasn't been released, I believe, out to the general public. So right now, it's still a multiple choice, multiple right answer exam. All right. Okay, so after you schedule your exam, what do you do next? Well, one, I would create a daily habit of keeping up, right? There are user groups, there's events and webinars, there's the AWS podcast, right? There's the AWS blog, which I highly recommend that you stay connected to. And so if we come out here and take a look, let's just say the AWS blog, for example. So the AWS blog for Amazon Web Services has, first of all, a lot of information in it, a lot. So what if you're only interested in a certain category? Well, guess what? They've got that opportunity. If you want a certain language, you've got that as well. Or if you want to like get an RSS feed or get on a mailing list, you can do that as well, right? But note that you probably want to filter it and not just come here and read everything. As we said before, you're probably only interested in a specific subset of services. So I'd probably focus on those services to begin with, instead of just kind of eating the whole enchilada. For example, if you're doing migration or modernization with AWS, you might be very interested in how to modernize in this whole set of articles here, but you probably wouldn't be, for example, then interested in high performance computing, right? Maybe that's not your thing and that's not where you're focused, right? So maybe instead you just pick the area that is of most significance to you. Note that also if you're looking for training and certification information, it's also here, right? And they do have links to other things like the AWS Power Hour or Containers from the Couch. Also know that if you go to aws.training, this link will actually, and you can create an account for this as well, will allow you to search for training. For example, let's say it's migrating. You're looking to migrate to AWS. And this, for example, will allow you to filter for online free trainings and e-learnings that you can use with AWS. So aws.training is a spectacular website. And most of the ramp-up guides will actually point you to this training to get little snippets of training. Now, this is not instructor-led, but you can click into them in many cases and get to instructor-led for related classes if that's what you're looking for. But it's got things like how to migrate Oracle to Amazon Aurora, or how to move managed databases on AWS, just as an example. Now, let's say you're not interested in migrating, like that's not necessarily a priority for you. Well, what you can do is you can actually just, go through the learning library itself and just focus on the things that are of the utmost importance to you by role, by skill level, or if there's a particular technology domain that is of extreme interest to you, you can choose that here as well. So just know that in AWS.training, there's lots of opportunities to kind of round out to get the expertise and experience that you're looking for inside of AWS. The other thing is that there is an AWS Users Group. So the AWS User Group, right, of which they exist all over the world, right? But you can actually find your relevant region. And so, for example, if we're in North America and you're like, where, I'm located in Georgia. I wonder if they actually have something going on in, say, Atlanta. Well, actually, there's 3 in Atlanta, right? There's one in Buckhead, there's one in the Northeast, and there's one in the Northwest, right? And I'm probably closest to Buckhead. Actually, I know I'm closest to Buckhead. And what you can do is you can see the organizers who will focus on different things around AWS. And so here their next meeting is May 13th, and they just actually had a meeting 12 days ago, right? About how to transform your organization's culture with a cloud center of excellence. So just know that you want to stay continually improving and continually connected, especially after you get your AWS certification, because this information is going to change so fast that what's true today may not be true tomorrow. I'll give you an example. I was inside, I can't remember what I was doing actually, but I was over here doing something with Git, and I was using my, I don't even know if my keys actually work right now. Oh no, my keys probably don't work. So I was actually, oh no, they do actually work. Oh good. I was out here doing something with EBS, and when I was out here messing around, I noticed that there was this multi-attach function for the hard drives in the Elastic Block Store. The Elastic Block Store, by the way, is the virtual hard drive service for virtual machines inside of AWS. And I was out here messing around with the command line, and I noticed that there was a new feature called multi-attach. Well, typically you weren't able to attach hard drives to more than one virtual machine, but now with multi-attach, which has been out actually for 6 months or so, you could actually attach them. That's just an example of I live in this world, and even I had not been keeping up 100% with all the new features that were going on inside of AWS. So make sure that you have a daily habit of keeping up. It's absolutely essential and absolutely important to do so. Okay. Here's a reminder also, because we've been talking about matching some prerequisites, talking about getting a good target, talking about making sure that once you've got that target, how do you get a map for the target, following the map, and then how do you get hands-on experience, how do you get practice exam experience, then scheduling the exam, and then how to stay continually integrated. Well, for example, I'm going to pick on DevOps because that's the area that I know the most, right? Is that you'll see things like this, right? This is from a link called roadmap.sh, right? And I actually will pull this up in the browser so you can see this in a little bit more detail. But roadmap.sh, of which there's a couple of different paths here, but let's choose DevOps for a second, right? And this is interesting because, like it says, this is what you need in order to do DevOps, right? You need to pick one of these and do one of these and understand this whole thing. And to be frank, to a certain degree, that's actually true, right? You know a little bit about process monitoring and about text manipulation tools, but when you look at this as a beginner, oh, this is a lot, right? It would be better to be like, hey, what's the first step? You know what? Let's just do this. Let's learn just enough of a programming language to like be solid, right? Let's not necessarily like look at this whole thing and get overwhelmed about, oh, this is the roadmap in front of me, right? Just take it one step at a time. And so that's the same recommendation here, is let's just take it one step at a time. So if you don't know where to start, let's not make it complicated. Let's just start here. Let's just start with Cloud Practitioner Essentials. Let's just do that, right? And you can follow the Cloud Practitioner exam, and let's just stay focused on the very first next step that you can take. The very next step that you can take, if you're unsure, is Cloud Practitioner. If you already have experience, as we mentioned before, you can go do the architecture exam. If you're super experienced, then go tackle one of the professional exams, whichever one you want, right? But if you don't know where to start, let's just start here. Start with Cloud Practitioner. That will give you the foundations to know exactly what your next steps should be, or ideally would be, for your career or your role. So let's wrap it all up. By the way, this link right here, which I'm actually going to post inside of chat, this actually is the official link for this webinar that will walk you through all of the different steps, including a few videos, right? All of the links and pieces that I'm talking about here, including all of the specialty exams, right? All the training links. By the way, if you go to part 2, right, this will also take you to the rest of the presentation. So you can actually walk through that as well. Okay. So let's just, again, prerequisites, choosing your target exam, read the ramp up guide. And by the way, I used to recommend the exam guides with something that you would read, but the exam guides are so simple compared to the ramp up guides that I no longer recommend that you read the exam guides. I recommend that you focus on the ramp up guides, which is what I recommended before. And then do what the ramp up guide says, get some hands-on experience, get 95% on your practice exams, for real. And then schedule your exam. And if you're just getting started, just make sure you obviously start with Cloud Practitioner, and then just get in that habit of continual learning, never stop growing. Because in this industry, if you are not acquiring at least one new skill, even at a beginner's level, per year, you're probably falling behind and you're not as efficient as you could be. And so in this day and age, it's essential, actually, that we are constantly growing, even if it's just a smidgen every single day, to keep up with technologies like cloud and even Kubernetes. And if it feels overwhelming, then specialize. Become very good at a particular swath or niche of technology relevant for your role, and just focus on that. Because there's so much to learn out there, and focus is probably the most valuable commodity next to time nowadays. So focus in on something that's going to make you an extremely valuable specialist for your company or the role that you're searching for. Continue to grow in that role, and you're going to be incredibly valuable to the company that you're wanting to engage with. And maybe the company that you're at right now, it could be another company. Not judging. Okay. We do offer, by the way, a variety of other programs, right? Most of them are specific to specific companies, so I apologize if there's BAH specific items and stuff in here. But with that, I'm going to close and stop talking and open the floor up for any questions, comments. we usually leave, a number of items because people ask questions during. So we might in the exam, in the webinar early, but I want to open the floor up to see if anybody has any questions that they'd like me to spend time answering. I am an 11-year veteran of AWS, and I focus particularly in DevSecOps and infrastructure. And I work a lot in enterprise transformation. So if there's any questions about this webinar, now would be the time to give voice to them. Let's see, there was a question that came in. What is my learning trajectory if I want to become certified in AWS, but my current company is not interested in AWS services or migration? That, sir, is a great question. It's unfortunate because, what do you do when your personal trajectory, because you want to stay relevant and want to, obviously stay valuable in the industry. What do you do when your company is not creating an environment where that can happen? Do it anyway. When I first got started, my company was not interested back in 2011, 2012 in cloud, and I literally carved out, a couple hours a week away from my family to, study. And I actually had a partner. I remember I pulled in a gentleman named Alan Sauter, and we studied together actually, and kind of like pushed the edge. And Cloud Practitioner wasn't out at the time, so we actually went for the developer on AWS, because oddly enough, developing on AWS, the Developer Associates exam, is actually not so much about programming, but about programming and using AWS services. And it's actually, from my perspective, the easiest of the 3 associates exams to take. And even though I wasn't a developer, and neither was Alan was a security specialist, we actually went after that exam and easily conquered it at the time. Of course, we had both been a year or two into AWS at that point in time. In terms of like tracking it and getting engaged, right? But our companies weren't super interested, right? But we were super focused on AWS. So, Mr. Slaney, I would say, do it anyway. Carve out your own time. Go grab Cloud Practitioner Essentials. That, by the way, has a free digital training to it. It'll cost you almost no money, right? Maybe like $10 to $20 to get the practice exams. Actually, that's $15 at most, but another $5 for the experience, and just go do it yourself. Go knock it out of the park. Make yourself valuable, and then when they're ready to go with AWS, or when you're ready to move on, you have that opportunity, right? And I'm not advocating any path. I'm just saying that I would recommend that. Let's see. Curious as to how much time is spent studying and practicing for the exams. So I recently did the Solutions Architecture Associates, and I took a group with me because I actually do study groups for companies and for like people and individuals who want a personal coach around achieving certification and expertise in AWS. And so I took a group with me, and we spent about 8 weeks studying for the professional exam. And that group, by the way, they all worked for AWS. So they already had their Cloud Practitioner, but and they had their Solutions Architecture Associate. So it only took them 8 weeks of about maybe 3 to 5 hours a week of study, including our weekly meeting, for them to achieve that certification. So it's not as much time as you think, right? Probably at the top end, 5 hours a week for 8 weeks. It's probably about 40 hours. But it also depends on your level of exposure and experience. Most of the people in that class were veterans of AWS and in running workloads in AWS. So the hour mileage is going to vary quite a bit. On the top end, if you're experienced, you'll spend 40 hours, right? Basically 2 months getting ready for the professional exam. If you're not super experienced with running workloads on AWS, it can take 100 hours, right, to get that experience necessary. But I will tell you that when you do achieve it, it's worth it. You're done, right? You have the experience and the expertise to do what the exam is asking you to do. Excellent. Where can we go for creating diagrams other than Lucidcharts? Chinoa, that's a great question, actually. So one of my favorite newly discovered websites, let me see if I can find my cursor, this is probably one of my favorite discovered websites, but unfortunately it's not free, right? It's not free. Let's see, cloudcraft.com. There we are. So this one, by the way, allows you to create really smart AWS diagrams. And I think they give you like the first one for free, right? But after that, you have to pay for it. The other one that's really good that does a lot of integration is Lucidchart. So Lucidchart will actually let me put the AWS appellation on there. Lucidchart will actually pull from your account and actually draw the diagram for you. I don't remember if that's free or not. When I was talking about it with somebody, I believe it's not. But you know, there are diagrams and templates for AWS for almost every major diagramming tool that I know. And so Lucidchart and Cloudcraft are the two favorites that I see most people use. And you'll actually see Cloudcraft all over AWS's website. So once you see this kind of like interesting format, you'll see it all over. So that's my recommendation right now. Let's see. Kind of as a follow-up question is that there was a statement: if I follow AWS certification, but I don't use it, you'll lose it. You will lose some of it, and that's true regardless. Even if you're actually studying for the certification and you go work on AWS workloads, your project is going to be focused on a certain set of services, so you're going to forget certain material. But that's why I advocate continual improvement. Keep going to webinars, stay connected with the Slack channels and the user groups, and follow the blogs. And Corey, what will happen is it will reinforce the learning. It will keep reasserting the material that you already have by putting new information associated with it. So you're right, and that happens invariably. We forget things. We're really great at forgetting things, actually, and that's good because there's too much information for us to retain. So if you want to just make sure that doesn't happen, just continue to kind of reinforce it by making sure that you're staying, on a continual learning path. Just get new information and bring it in, right? Let's see where to download the slides. You were on the slides. So I think we typically send out an email as a follow-up that has a PDF of the slides. I need to do a little cleanup to send them out because it has some company-specific items in there. But we usually send the slides within 24 hours. So you'll see those here shortly, Ms. Cheng. Let's see. I am interested in automation, AI, machine learning, and data analytics. Corey, great. So just to say this is that if we go all the way back to the ramp-up guides, you'll find links for data analytics, for machine learning. I don't think they have an artificial intelligence one. I think right now that's still linked under machine learning. And automation isn't necessarily linked here. A lot of that will actually follow up under system operations. One thing I can mention is that CloudFormation is the de facto integrated tool for use with AWS that provides a lot of the automation. It's either through JSON or YAML templates. And if you think that you might go multi-cloud, if you think that you might want to stay relevant with, say, Azure, Google, and AWS, then the de facto industry tool right now for multi-cloud is actually not CloudFormation, because CloudFormation is AWS's native tool, but it's a third-party product called Terraform by a company called HashiCorp. And Terraform is pretty much the de facto multi-cloud tool that everybody uses when they are connecting with multi-cloud inside of AWS. Terraform works off this concept of providers that extend functionality into cloud providers. And so if you're interested in automation at a multi-cloud level, I would highly recommend that you learn Terraform and possibly Ansible as well if you're doing virtual machine deployment, because who's going to manage your operating systems? Terraform isn't going to do it. Terraform is more focused on provisioning for cloud. Ansible will help you manage your operating systems. If you're already familiar with Chef or Puppet, those are also great options as well. Good. Let me just make sure I didn't miss any questions that came up. No, looks like that's complete. Okay. Well, if no one has any other questions, then without further ado, I will go out and hang out for a few minutes and officially close the call. It is 12:37 Eastern Daylight Time, as I'm on the East Coast. I really appreciate you coming out and listening to me talk about the steps for certification. And just a reminder, get your prerequisites, target your certification, get a map for your target, follow the map, get some hands-on experience, do your practice guides, and then schedule your exam and most importantly, never stop learning, never stop growing. So I'm Michael Forrester. I appreciate your time. You've been fabulous asking questions, and I hope to catch you on the next webinar. Thank you, everybody.